name is Carly, and I'm here with Junior Achievement of North Florida to help prepare you, a high school student, for how to prepare for your financial future. We are going to be focusing today on different types of credit and how it can be used to your benefit. And we'll start out by saying not all types of credit are bad. When used wisely, credit can even possibly help you save money. So we're going to talk today about the different sources of credit and how you can use it wisely. So to get us warmed up, we're going to use a bit of a fitness theme. So just like when you're exercising, we can't be financially fit laying around on the couch all day and then run a marathon. Same thing with using credit. We have to make sure our financial future and our financial fitness is going well so that we can use credit wisely. And I want you to think now, what are some things that you already know about credit? So maybe you know that credit cards are a form of credit. Maybe you've heard that credit can be good or credit can be bad. And maybe you've also heard that when you're using a credit card, you're actually borrowing money to pay off later. So let's talk about what all of those things are so that you have a good understanding of how to use it. So first, credit is the ability to buy goods or services now, but actually pay for them later. So when you're using that credit card, you're not actually using your current money right that moment. You are using a financial institution or a bank that gave you that credit. You're using their money to pay them back later. So when you're using credit, you then owe debt, which is the money that you owe for using that credit. And often, if you are having to pay debt, you also will owe interest. Interest is a payment for the use of money or a fee to use someone else's money. So let's say you have a credit card and you have a credit limit or a credit amount of $500. The bank says you have a credit amount of $500. That doesn't mean that you owe a debt or any money right away. That's just the amount of money that you could use. You have up to $500 to spend. But let's say you then do use your credit or that money that you were given, and you use it to buy a TV for $300. Well, now your debt or the amount that you owe your credit, that you owe for that credit is $300. And you're expected to pay that $300. Now, it's hoped that you will pay for it as soon as possible by whatever your credit due date is. But the more that you wait on paying that money back, the more interest you will owe. So let's say you have an interest rate that you have to pay every time you owe money. You're then going to have to owe more and more money every month. So if we're using credit wisely, we're going to try to pay it off as soon as possible so that our debt goes down and that we don't have to pay as much interest. Credit can be so helpful when used wisely. If you know that you need to buy something that costs a lot of money, but you don't have the money to be able to pay for it all right up at front, like a car or like a house, using credit can be so helpful because you can pay that money off over time, as long as you are making your payments on time. So we're going to watch a video now from David Paul from the American Honda Finance Corporation. He's going to tell us a little bit about the benefits and costs of credit and see what we think.
Minutes to become smart credit consumers. Can you help us, and are you up to the challenge?
Well, Malay, I hope I can. That's a big challenge, but this is one of those topics for young men and young women like yourself that's not talked about enough. Very important area, so hopefully I can help out.
So tell us a little about yourself.
Well, I'm married, father of 5 children, and I work for American Honda Finance. We do the financing for Acura and Honda cars. So basically my job is to help the dealers get the money they need to run their stores and sell cars to consumers, and to give consumers the money they need to buy the cars, Hondas and Acuras.
You probably don't don't get a lot of high schoolers buying new cars, right? Why do you care about high school personal finance?
Well, you're right. We don't see a lot of high schoolers buying cars, but I think a lot of them would like one. I think you'd like a new car, but we are very concerned because, Malaya, you and your friends are the car buyers of the future. And I think sometimes the youth don't realize that the choices you're making today actually can impact your ability to make a car purchase, a home purchase, other big purchases in the future.
Let's start with the basics. What is credit?
Well, credit, the basic idea is that someone's going to lend or give money to someone with the idea that they're going to pay it back, agree to pay it back over a certain period of time.
That's amazing. Somebody's just gonna give me money and I gotta pay it back later?
Well, hold on a little bit. It's not quite that easy. I know that sounds great, but the fact is there's a lot of risks involved with this process, but there's some benefits too. Let's discuss some of those. First of all, having credit, it's very convenient. Sometimes using cash, it's not as safe, and it's nice to be able to, in emergencies, have an ability to have a credit source of money available to you. Also, as we talked about, making big purchases, having credit, one of the benefits of buying a car, home, schooling, can't necessarily always save enough to get for those experiences ready. It's nice to have credit to be able to do that. Also, it's important to establish something, a real benefit is something called credit history, showing your ability to make payments. As you establish that, then more people are willing to lend money to you in the future. In fact, we even find some employers now are actually using a credit score, credit history, as one of the qualifiers for hiring for a job. So being prepared with that is another benefit of having credit. But there's risks too. On the risk side, it's really easy to make impulse purchases. You get that little piece of plastic in your hand, doesn't feel like real money sometimes, and you can maybe buy more than you can even afford to pay back later. Also, it can get complicated. There's a lot of fine-tuned small print sometimes, details that you don't maybe understand that you're getting into, so you got to be really careful. So those are some of the risks. Benefits and risks, but you need to be aware.
How can institutions afford to give everyone money? Aren't they worried some people won't pay them back?
Well, you're hitting the heart of it right there. The fact is we can't. We can't afford to give money to anyone that just comes along that wants to get money from us. We have to be careful and make sure that we're giving money to those that have the ability to pay us back. We're taking a risk when we give money to someone that they're going to pay us back later. So we need to determine who's safe to lend money to and who will be able to pay us back.
How can you guess just by looking if someone will pay you back a loan?
Well, luckily we don't have to guess. We look at what we call their credit history, their past experiences with credit, and how they've paid others in the past. So we can make a very sound judgment decision whether we should lend money to them.
I don't have any credit history. What should I do?
Common problem for young people like yourself that you don't have credit to begin. There's a couple of good ways, though, to get a start at it. First, often someone will go to their parent, maybe an older brother or sister, and have them co-sign. Line up alongside them on the loan so that then you can pay yourself and establish that credit record, but use the strength of someone else to get going. Another way, often in college years, you might get a credit card or something. It's a very simple first step, but there you got to be very careful that you make sure that you're making payments on time and paying off the whole balance and show that you really can make payments and reliable and build a good solid credit history. Those are a good couple of ways to get started.
What are some mistakes that young buyers make that can affect them later?
Well, you know, there's a lot of mistakes that can be made, but let's just look at an example, maybe one of the more common ones. As an example, let's look at 3 young people buy a cell phone. $300, they all paid the same amount, they all borrowed money to pay it. First example, they paid it off right away. So no interest accrued, they immediately paid it off after they borrowed it, so $300 is exactly what they paid for the phone. In the second example, the person just made their monthly payments, paid them all on time, as scheduled, about $10 a month, and so over 3 years, they will have paid about $350 for that cell phone, and they would have established some good credit, but they would have paid some interest on top of it. Third example, this is where the big mistakes come in, is someone who only paid the bare minimum amount that they could each month and missed a few payments along the way. Now, as you can see, when this happens, They not only go longer on the loan, they also hurt their credit history because of not paying it off fast and missing some, but they actually pay $420 rather than $300 to get that phone. So different ways to handle credit. You got to be careful and make sure you're being on time and very careful in your payments.
What is a credit score?
Well, a credit score, it's a lot like your grades at school. You get grades for each of your classes. GPA, it's culminated to an overall GPA that you have in high school. Credit is looked at by all the different experiences you've had, different payment histories, and we combine all of those to an overall credit score. The higher the score, the better it is. Now, not every lender has the exact same cutoffs, but commonly it's in this general area. Roughly a score of 720 to 850 would be like an 8+. Score in the 700 to 719 range would be an A. B+ would be like a 675, 699. 620 to 674 was a B. I think you get the idea.
Yes.
C and D down. We'd love to see people obviously have stronger credit scores. And those that have a higher score are actually rewarded often with a lower interest rate. Those that don't have as good a score, sometimes it's harder to get credit, and sometimes when they do, they have to pay a little higher interest rate. So the higher the score, the better off you are, and it's an important feature. In fact, I often recommend to people that are going out to make a purchase to look up their score, know what it is before you go, so you can be more in control of the situation. Be aware of where you are, so you can know what your options are.
Well, time's up. That's a lot of information in such a short time. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Melena, and good luck to you and all your friends.
So Mr. Paul told us about many different benefits and challenges to credit. So some of the things you heard, benefits are that we can be able to spend for an emergency or buy a large purchase without having that full amount of money at that time. And it helps to build our credit history and credit score, which we're going to talk about. And of course, we know the challenges are people are going to be tempted to buy things on credit when they don't really have the money to pay it off. And if we don't pay it off on time, it can hurt our credit score. So we have to think about how we can use it wisely. So just like with fitness, the more that we exercise, the better our health is going to be. Same thing with our finances. The more that we use them wisely, the better our financial health is. So when we think about credit, the way that we've spent our money in the past is going to impact how people decide to give us credit in the future. And I want you to think about if you were running a race, say a relay race, and you were given the opportunity to pick who your teammates are. How would you pick who your teammates are? So you probably think about who's had the best numbers in some of the past meets, or who does the best in past practices. So you're gauging it on how the people have done already before. Now that's what lenders do. What they do when they decide how much credit to give you is they first will look at your credit history. That's a record of all of your past personal financial transactions. And your credit score. So a credit score is a number, like what Mr. Paul showed in the video. It's a number that you are given by financial institutions, and it uses data to decide what your potential is for repaying debt. So they say, how have you done in the past at paying off your debts? So they can decide if you should be given credit and how much. It's just like the gymnastics judges at the Olympics. They'll give a score from 1 to 10, and each of those numbers are based off of certain criteria. A 10 clearly had no errors, while maybe an 8 had a little fall somewhere. Same thing with your credit history and credit score. It's based off of some real data. So the thing with a credit score is it can change over time. If you start to make wiser decisions and choices with your credit, the number can go up. But think about it. If you have lots of falls at the beginning of your routine, it's a lot harder to bring your score up. Same thing with credit. It's a lot easier to keep a good score than to bring up a low score. So I want you to think now, what are two things that you would think about if you were trying to decide to lend someone some money, to give someone a loan? What would help you decide if you should give that loan or not? Well, here are the criteria that most lenders are going to be looking for. First, they want to know your payment history. Have you paid your payments in the past on time? And then your amount of money owed. Do you already owe a lot of money? Because if not, they're going to be worried that it'll be hard for you to pay for other new purchases if you still owe more money. Third would be your length of your credit history. So yes, it is hard that when you're younger, you haven't had as much time to build your credit. But if you are able to open credit accounts at a younger age and then keep them over time, that means they know and trust that you can hold your credit over time. And then your ratio of available credit to the credit that you use. So let's say you have a credit amount every month of $15,000 and you spend that full $15,000 every month. Well, your lender might be worried that you might not be able to pay what you already owe if you keep having to max out your amount. So a lot of times it's recommended to spend about 30% of your available credit. So maybe not spending any more than $5,000 of that available $15,000, so that they know that you're not spending all the time and might not be able to pay off what you have. So now let's sprint. Let's use the knowledge we gained to play an activity. All right, so we're gonna play a game called Profiles in Credit. What I want you to do is put on your lender hat. I want you to imagine that you are a lender, and I'm going to read with you a description of someone who's asking for a loan. And I want you to decide, based on the description, would you give them a loan or not? Now, remember, this is tricky. Sometimes your friend might say, yes, I would, and you might say, no, I wouldn't. That's what you have to think about, is how tricky this is. That sometimes people will give loans while other people would not. So there's not a definite answer for these. So the first situation, would you loan to Jasmine? Jasmine got her first credit card 1 year ago and maxed it out within 6 months. She makes the minimum payment she owes on the card every month, except in March and April, when she made payments about a week late. She got a second card 3 months ago, but keeps it reserved for emergencies and hasn't used it yet. She's been feeling a little nervous about her credit report, so she hasn't requested to see it yet. She's starting to feel as though she'd rather not know her credit score at all. So think for a second. Would you loan Jasmine that money? So rather than give you a definite answer, we'll just talk about some of the pros and challenges that she's facing. Well, first, a challenge is that she already maxed out her credit card in 6 months. So that means that if you're looking at her credit, it looks as though she's spent way more than than is predicted she should be able to use. She also only is making the minimum payments, so she is making payments, which is good. She's not just making it only debt, but she missed 2 weeks she was late. So we have to think about things like automatic payments, making sure that we can pay it off without even having to think about it so we don't forget it, or making sure that we have at least the minimum ready to pay. So those are 2 things that would make me a little worried. Another thing, so she got another credit card 3 months ago, and I like that she's keeping it just for emergencies. She's not spending on it. So that is one good thing. She's nervous about her credit report, so she hasn't looked at it. So credit reports for most of your credit card companies is a free service to see it. So not knowing what your credit score looks like would be a challenge, because she can't work to fix it if she doesn't know what it looks like right now. So those are some of the things. I'll let you decide if you would loan her the money, but she's in a bit of a tough situation. Let's talk about Tyler. Tyler is a recent college graduate. He currently has $15,000 in student loan debt. He earns enough income to cover his loan payments and basic expenses, but has slipped up and made a few late payments. He recently received offers for several different credit cards in the mail. Some of them have low interest starting rates that look very tempting. Tyler is starting to think that having a credit card or two in his wallet would be a good way to free up some spending money in his budget. So let's think for a second. Would you loan Tyler money? Okay, well, let's dive into a few things. So he already owns $15,000 in student loan debt. Many college students will owe money, so that's not necessarily always a bad thing. He's going to earn income to cover his loan payments and his basic expenses, so that's good. We do know that Tyler already has some money coming in to cover the things that he needs to buy. We would be a little worried that he has slipped up and made a few late payments though. We need to know that Tyler can pay off make his payments every single month on time. Something else we might be worried about or thinking about is that he is thinking he could use his credit cards to spend money that he doesn't have yet. Remember, we always want to think about credit as a way that we can always pay it off. So, something that we would want to coach Tyler around is making sure if he uses that credit card to spend that he can actually pay it off. Let's talk about Noah. Would you loan to Noah? Noah just got his first credit card and decided that he would use it to finance a trip to see Disneyland for the first time. He won't be able to pay it off all at once, but he decided that it would be worth paying the monthly interest and fees to give himself the special gift of vacation. If he can't pay the monthly interest, he will pay what he can and let the interest add up. Would you give Noah a loan? All right, well, let's break down some of the things in his decision. Well, he wants to use his credit card to go to Disneyland. Remember, when we're using credit cards, we want to make sure it's for purchases that we are able to pay off, or that if it's an emergency and we know we're going to pay it off as soon as we can. So he already says he's not going to be able to pay it off all at once. And he thinks it would be worth paying the interest to be able to go on that trip. Well, he has to think he's going to have to pay significantly more than the cost of that trip just because he can't pay it off on time. So we might recommend to him to instead save up money for a few more months and then go on that trip. So when he gets that credit card payment, he can pay it off with that money that he's already saved. We're gonna do one last one. Would you loan to Alyssa? Alyssa is self-employed and has operated her own pet grooming business for 3 years. As a small business owner, her income fluctuates from month to month, but she always has been able to cover her expenses. She has a business credit card and a personal credit card, both of which she pays off on time every month. She recently applied for a loan to get a new van, which would allow her to expand her business to make house calls. Would we give money to Alyssa? Okay, so some things that we would want to celebrate for her. One, you'll remember she pays off on time every single month. That's great for her. Even though her income fluctuates from month to month, she's still able to pay off every month. So that's a great sign. Also great that she has had her business for 3 years. So she's been able to do this over time. This isn't just a new thing. And also, she's asking for a van to make her to expand her business, so she could be making even more money. So, lots of good things going on for Alyssa that we would want to think about when making that loan decision. All right, so we talked about a lot of things when it comes to credit. Let's quickly review the most important ideas. One, using credit is spending your future money now. Credit scores are essential for buying power. So we still need a credit score and have to develop credit over time to be able to buy those big ticket items. And remember, your credit score is based on a formula, and it can improve or decline depending on how you spend. And your credit history and credit score can affect your future opportunities for getting credit or your amount of debt in the future. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to sharing more about money management with you over the next few weeks. Have a great day.